It was after 9 p.m. when Maya stepped into the elevator. Rain ticking against the glass atrium like 1,000 impatient fingernails. The doors were almost closed when a man in a charcoal suit slid in without a sound. He smelled faintly of old paper and cold metal. He didn't look at her. He pressed the basement button. Maya frowned. There isn't a basement. Not since the retrofit. In 90, he smiled, small and private, as if she'd told a joke he'd heard before. They don't know I'm still here. The elevator hummed. Instead of going up, the floor number slipped. 8, 7, 6, then 3, 2, 1, and passed it into nothing. The panel bled a letter she'd never seen glow before. Her thumb hit door open. Nothing. Alarm. A thin, embarrassed beep. The intercom crackled with a voice that sounded like it had learned English from a recording. There is no basement in this building. Then where are we going? Maya? Ask it. The man in the suit didn't answer. He fixed his tie, watching the mirrored steel. In the reflection, she saw herself wide eyes, damp hair, a nervous smile, and next to her, the space where he should be. Empty. The doors slid open on a corridor that breathed cold. The walls were painted government beige, the kind that grows yellow like teeth. Fluorescence flickered and hummed. Somewhere far off, water dripped with the patience of a clock. Not possible, she said, but followed him out, because staying in the box felt worse. The doors sealed behind them like a mouth. They passed a directory in a glass case, the letters pressed into black felt. Firms that didn't exist anymore. Doctors dead for decades, and one brass strip halfway down. M. Ortega. She was M. Ortega. The date stenciled beneath, in tiny ink. 1991. I didn't. Her voice snagged. I wasn't here then. Buildings remember what people file, he said. Your name was submitted. That's enough. He led her to a heavy door with chipped hazard stripes. Inside waited a room drowned in quiet. At the center, a shallow pool of black water that didn't ripple, reflecting the ceiling too perfectly. She leaned over and saw herself, but the reflection's lips were bluish, and its hair clung to the neck in wet ropes. When she blinked, it blinked a half-second late. What is this? Maya whispered. Back when the city sealed the basement, they sealed the math wrong, he said. Someone stayed off the ledger. A floor can sink under a missing name. I'm leaving. She turned, grabbed the handle. It didn't budge. A wet handprint appeared on the metal, overlapping hers. You don't need to die, he said gently. You only need to sign. He guided her to a wall poured smooth with concrete. Pressed into it were shallow impressions, palms, fingertips, a cheek, as if many people had leaned here while the cement was still breathing. Initials scratched beside them. Small, careful letters. M.O. Her stomach flipped. No. She stepped back. The letters seemed to darken, as if ink were wicking up from inside the wall. Everyone signs, he said. Some before they arrive. Who are you? She asked. I was the one they forgot, he said, smiling like a man who had practiced being kind. Now I remember for them. The lights stuttered. Somewhere above, a drill screamed and stopped. Maya put her palm against the cool impressions, because her body had already decided. The fit was exact, cold soaked into her bones like a promise. Something in the wall leaned back. Good, he said. Now the building holds. Her hand came away dusty, as if she'd clapped an old book shut. She could breathe again. The elevator dinged from nowhere and the doors opened onto the lobby plants. Polished stone, a board guard flipping through channels. See, he said, they won't even know. She stepped in, dazed, and turned to ask him one more thing. But there was no one to ask. The man in the suit wasn't in the hallway. He wasn't in the reflection. The elevator doors slid shut on empty air. Weeks later, when the contractors bored through the old foundation, nothing collapsed. People said the building felt sturdier. Maya slept better mostly. She avoided mirrors after the shower. Sometimes, standing in elevators, she felt the urge to rest her hand against the wall, right where the panel ends. If her fingers strayed lower, they brushed cold, like damp stone behind the stainless steel. One night a courier slipped into the elevator as the doors were closing. He laughed, grateful. "Basement?" he asked, jabbing at the panel. "This place even have one?" Maya smiled without showing teeth. "Not for decades." A soft amber light flared below the lowest number. A button that shouldn't exist warmed under the courier's thumb. He frowned. "Huh?" "Must be mislabeled." Maya's reflection. A beat behind, smiled back. "They don't know I'm still here." It mouthed just a fraction too late. The elevator began to go down. She slipped in at 2:30 a.m., rain on her jacket, mascara salty at the corners of her mouth, and scooted into bed beside her boyfriend's. Familiar warmth, the way you do when you don't want to talk, just vanish into sleep. The body turned toward her without a word. Breath steady, and she let the comfort swallow her whole. In the morning, coffee clinked in the kitchen. "Morning, babe," her boyfriend called, voice bright and tired. "I pulled an all-nighter at Trent's. Just got in." She propped herself up, the sheet still warm, where her thigh had been draped over someone's calf. "Don't joke," she said, smiling, but the smile never reached her throat. Her phone buzzed 3 missed calls from him, all around midnight. A video of his buddy SA living room, the TV flashing a football game, his face half-lit. "You up?" "Missed you." "Down the hall." The faucet shrieked as water punched through the pipes. The bathroom door cracked. Off-white slab stood half open. Inside, the shower curtain bulged inward like it had lungs. Steam ghosted the mirror, and something with a slow patience traced letters from the other side of the glass. "Where's my warmth?" She yanked the duvet back. On the pillow beside hers, a single strand of hair, twice the length of hers, thick and wet like it had been sucked out of a drain. The sheet where her head had rested showed a perfect dark oval, damp all the way through to the mattress. The smell wasn't cologne. It was river. "Hey," her boyfriend called again from the kitchen, closer now. "Who are you talking to?" She didn't answer. The shower shut off. In the new silence, water kept dripping too slow, too heavy. Plip. 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 Her phone chimed one more time. A grainy, 2-second video from their bedroom at 1:47 a.m. Time-stamped, sent from her own account. It showed the door opening, the bed, and Aurori there lifting the covers, making space. The camera tilted down like a head laying on a shoulder. In the bottom corner, something pale and smiling hovered just long enough to be mistaken for her reflection. Footsteps padded down the hall, wet footprints blooming on the hardwood toward the kitchen's bright square of morning. She realized with a sick drop that every print was facing away from the bed. From the kitchen came her boyfriend's voice, low and edged. "Now why's the floor wet?" Behind her, the bathroom mirror cleared in a breath. New letters formed under the first. "Thank you." She turned toward the doorway as the shower curtain slowly exhaled back into place. The bedroom doorknob clicked, not turning locking. From the kitchen, a chair scraped. "Babe." Something lay down in the bed again, without sinking the mattress, and nuzzled the hollow she'd warmed in the night. Its whisper crawled up her spine in a voice almost like hers. "You made room." David and Claire lived in a small house on the outskirts of Rockford, Illinois. Their baby girl, Emma, had just turned 9 months old. Like most new parents, they were exhausted, constantly worrying, and glued to the baby monitor on the nightstand by their bed. Every night, they'd hear Emma babbling herself to sleep. Little giggles, soft hums, sometimes the cute nonsense syllables that only a baby could invent. It was comforting in a way, proof she wasn't alone in the dark. Until one night, it was past midnight when David stirred awake. He blinked at the glowing red light on the monitor and frowned. Emma was asleep when they'd put her down at 9 p.m. He reached over and turned the volume up. A man's voice, low, deep, almost gravelly, came through the static. "Play with me." David froze, staring at the monitor. He shook Claire awake. "What?" "What is it?" she mumbled. He pressed a finger to his lips and pointed at the monitor. Emma's crib was visible on the grainy night vision screen. She was fast asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling. But the voice continued, "Play with me." Claire sat bolt upright. "That's not Emma." They rushed to her room, hearts pounding. But when they opened the nursery door, Emma was sound asleep, the room quiet except for the faint rattle of the heater. They checked the closet, under the crib, even the baby monitor camera itself. Nothing. When they got back to their bedroom, the voice had stopped. Over the next week, the voice came back every night. Sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it chuckled. Once, it said Emma's name. Emima. The parents considered that maybe their monitor was picking up interference like a neighbor's walkie-talkie or an old CB radio. But it didn't explain how the voice always seemed to respond to Emma's babbling. One night, Emma clapped her hands together in the crib, and the voice, low and rumbling, said, "Good girl." Claire nearly vomited when she heard it. David tried to dismiss it until he heard footsteps. Not upstairs, not in the hallway. On the monitor, as if someone was walking across Emma's nursery floor. But when they opened the door, silence. Emma, asleep, nothing out of place. That night, Claire begged David to unplug the monitor, but he refused. What if something is happening? What if it's not just interference? So they kept it plugged in, and the voice grew bolder. One night, around 3 a.m., Claire opened her eyes and saw the monitor screen flicker. For just a second, a shape leaned over Emma's crib. It wasn't David. It wasn't Claire. It wasn't human. The thing had a long, narrow face with skin stretched too tightly across its bones. Its mouth hung open, black and bottomless. And then it was gone. Emma stirred in her sleep, as if sensing something near her. And the voice came again. "Play with me." The next morning, desperate for answers, Claire knocked on their neighbor's door. The woman who lived next door was in her 70s. Quiet, the kind who spent her afternoons on the porch swing. When Claire explained what was happening, the neighbor's face drained of color. "That house," she whispered, "a long time ago before you moved in there, was a family. Their little boy went missing from his crib. Police never found him. Parents swore he was taken in the night." Claire's stomach dropped. "They said the last thing they ever heard," the neighbor added, lowering her voice, "was his baby monitor. It kept picking up someone whispering, 'Play with me.'" That night, David set up a second camera, hidden in the nursery. If something was coming for Emma, he wanted proof. At 2:47 a.m., the monitor came alive with static. Emma stirred, and then footsteps. Slow, heavy. On the second camera feed, David saw it. A tall, gray-skinned figure stepped out of the corner of the nursery, as if peeling itself out of the shadow. Its arms were too long, its hands dragging along the floor. It bent over the crib and whispered, "Mine." David and Claire burst into the room. The figure snapped its head toward them. Its face was nothing but a cavern of teeth. Then it dissolved into the shadows. Emma began screaming. David destroyed the monitor the next morning, smashing it with a hammer, until it was nothing but wires and plastic. They threw away the cameras. For a few days, things were quiet. Emma slept peaceably. No voices, no footsteps, no shapes. But then, Claire found something under Emma's pillow, a tiny baby monitor speaker. Just the speaker, not tears, not any brand she recognized. And that night, as Emma babbled herself to sleep, the voice came again. "Play with me." This time, they didn't need the monitor to hear it. It was coming from the crib. It started on a gray, rainy afternoon in Oregon, the kind of day when the clouds press down like a lid, and every sound in the house seems too sharp, too close. 6-year-old Lily Carter, a small girl with curly brown hair tied in messy pigtails, ran into the kitchen clutching her stuffed bunny. Her mother was cooking at the stove, humming quietly, the smell of onions and garlic filling the room. Lily threw her arms around her mother's legs, burying her face against her apron. "Mommy," she said, breathless. Her mother froze, spatula hovering midair. She slowly turned her head, her green eyes full of confusion. "Sweetie," she said softly, "I'm right here." Lily looked up. Her mother stood in front of her, apron stained with sauce, strands of red hair falling from her bun. But behind her, standing just a few feet away, was another woman. Identical. The same red hair. The same green eyes. The same smile. Only this one was smiling too wide. Lily screamed. The stuffed bunny dropped from her arms. The second mom stepped closer, her bare feet soundless on the kitchen tile. "Don't be scared, baby," she said. Her voice was sweet, but wrong. Stretched, like someone had recorded her real mother's voice and played it back at the wrong speed. Her real mother grabbed a kitchen knife. "Who are you?" that double-tilted her head. "I'm you. Don't you recognize yourself?" The lights flickered, and for the briefest second, Lily swore. She saw the second mother's eyes turn black. They called the police. Officers searched the house top to bottom, but found nothing. No intruder, no sign of forced entry. "Just an unlocked back door. Probably someone playing a sick joke," the officer said. "Maybe she just looked like you. Kids scare easy." But Lily knew what she saw. She knew. That night, Lily crawled into her parents' bed. Her mom rubbed her back until she fell asleep. Hours later, Lily woke to the sound of whispering. She peeked over her mother's shoulder. The second mom was standing in the doorway, smiling, watching. The days grew worse. Lily began hearing her mother's voice calling her from empty rooms. "Lily, come here. I need you." But when she followed, no one was there. Her father brushed it off. Kids imagine things. Then one morning, the real mom reached for the coffee pot and screamed. Every single cabinet in the kitchen was filled with photographs. Hundreds of them. Old pictures of Lily sleeping. Different nights. Different angles. None taken by them. One evening, as Lily was playing in the yard, her mom called her in for dinner. Lily turned and saw two mothers again. One stood at the back porch, waving her inside. The other was at the kitchen window, beckoning her closer. Both identical. Both smiling. "Come here, sweetie." "No, come here." Lily's chest tightened. Her legs froze. She didn't know which was real. Then she remembered the stuffed bunny. Only the real mom had sewn its ear when it tore. She ran to the porch. The woman inside the kitchen window scowled, her face stretching unnaturally, her teeth sharpened as she hissed like an animal. Her dad didn't believe any of it. He told Lily's mom she was filling the kid's head with scary stories. One night, after another argument, he left the house in anger. He never came back. They found his car abandoned a few miles away. The driver's seat was soaked in blood. No body. Just his wallet, sitting neatly on the dashboard. That night, Lily saw the wrong mother again standing in her father's closet, wearing his clothes, grinning. By now, Lily's real mom was unraveling. She locked every door, every window. She assaulted the thresholds, burned sage, prayed to whatever she could. But the wrong mother was clever. She started pretending. Sometimes she would be in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, humming the same tune. Sometimes she'd sit at the table, helping Lily with homework. Sometimes she'd tuck Lily into bed, brushing her hair. It was almost impossible to tell the difference anymore. One night, Lily woke up thirsty. She padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "Here you go, sweetie," her mom said, handing her a glass of water. Lily drank it without thinking. Then she noticed her mom's nails longer, sharper, darker. Her eyes reflected the fridge light like an animal's. She dropped the glass. It shattered. Her mother just smiled. The next morning, the neighbors called the police. The house was silent. Inside, the stove was still on. Breakfast, half-cooked. But the Carters were gone. No signs of struggle, no blood. Just a single stuffed bunny on the floor. Weeks later, a new family moved into the house. Their little boy, about Lily's age, told his teacher something strange. "I love my new mommy," he said. "She tucks me in every night." The teacher smiled. "That's nice." The boy shook his head. "No, not her. My other mummy, the one who smiles too much. The wrong mother is never gone. She doesn't haunt a family. She becomes them." Ethan Willis lived alone on the outskirts of a small Texas town, where the nearest neighbor was a mile of mesquite trees and dry earth away. He liked it that way quiet, isolated, no one to bother him. He had a dog once, a black Labrador named Rex. But Rex had disappeared a year ago. Etom never got another. One night, as the cicadas droned and a dry wind scraped across his porch, Ethan stepped out to smoke. That's when he saw it. A thin, dark line trailing across the dirt. At first, he thought it was oil or spilled paint, but when he crouched down and touched it, the smell hit him. Iron. Sharp. Metallic. Blood. And it wasn't just a few drops, it was a steady trail. The streak stretched from the tree line and across his yard, weaving toward his porch like a snake. Ethan muttered, "Damn coyotes." Mustev got something and followed the trail with his flashlight. The beam quivered slightly in his hand. The blood led to his front steps, then onto the porch, then to the door. The lock was intact. The door was shut, but the blood didn't stop outside it. Continued underneath the door frame, smeared as if something had pushed it open. Ethan's stomach dropped. Inside. He unlocked the door slowly, his hand tightening around the knob. The smell hit him first, rotting copper and damp fur. The blood stretched across his living room carpet in a thick smear. Ethan whispered, "What the hell?" and followed it with the flashlight. The red streak led across the room, past the couch, and toward the hallway. That's when he noticed the drops on the walls. Smudged handprints, not paw prints, not splatter from an animal, but fingers. Human. The beam of his flashlight flicked toward the hallway and froze. A shadow stood at the end, not moving, not breathing. "Hust. There. Who's in my house?" Ethan barked, his voice shaking. The figure didn't respond. It turned. Slowly. The beam caught its face. Pale, sunken eyes. Its mouth was filled with blood, smeared across its chin. But what made Ethan stumble back was its hand. It was holding something dangling, dripping. A dog's collar. Rex's collar. The tag gleamed in the light. "No." Ethan whispered. "You can't be." The figure grinned, its teeth coated in red, and then it dropped the collar. The sound echoed through the house. Ethan bolted for the front door, but it slammed shut before he reached it. He pulled at the knob, but the wood felt like stone in his grip. The thing was behind him now. He could hear its wet, dragging footsteps on the carpet. He spun, flashlight trembling. The thing wasn't there. The blood trail had shifted. It was fresh again. Wet. Leading. Upstairs. And then he heard it. A door creaking open. Ease. Bedroom. Ethan took the hunting rifle from the cabinet and climbed the stairs, every step groaning under his weight. The flashlight beam caught the trail thicker now, almost painted across the steps. At the top of the landing, his bedroom door was cracked. A dim red glow flickered from inside. He shoved the door open, rifle raised. The room was empty. No figure. No body, just his bed soaked in blood. On the wall above it, smeared in thick red letters, "Welcome home." The floor creaked behind him. When a tournée, the hallway was empty, but now the trail of blood was gone. Every drop, every is smeared, vanished as if it never existed. Ethan didn't sleep that night, and when the sheriff came the next morning, there was no sign of blood. No writing on the wall. No footprints. Just the dog collar sitting neatly on his nightstand. And when Ethan picked it up, it was warm, like something had been holding it. That night, Ethan locks every door and window. Just before dawn, he hears the scratching of claws at the front door, followed by a low, human whisper. "Let me back in, Ethan. I found Rex." The end is a terrifying place for most of us, but for some, it's merely a beginning. If you don't believe me, listen to this week's story, a tale of terror from beyond the grave. Our story begins, like many do, with a family looking for a fresh start. Mark and Angela dreamed of space and freedom. So when they learned about a 2-story farmhouse on the edge of a quiet road in rural Tennessee, they jumped at it. The 200-year-old building was affordable, spacious, and surrounded by acres of woods. To the Miller family, it was perfect. Mark imagined tending a vegetable garden out back while the kids played on the wide front porch. In the evenings, he'd sit on the porch swing with Angela, listening to crickets chirp and fireflies wink. It was a peaceful picture, but even during their house hunting, something felt off. Mark shrugged it off his nerves. After all, buying a home is a stressful process, but a nagging feeling persisted. It started with the smell, a faint, rotten odor that seemed to drift through the vents late at night. At first, they blamed it on old plumbing or maybe a dead animal under the floorboards, but no matter how much air freshener they used, the smell always came back, sour and rancid, strongest just before dawn. Then came the noises. At first, soft creaks, as if someone were moving slowly through the crawl space beneath the house. The parents, Mark and Angela, told themselves it was just the wood settling. But then their son Ethan, who was 10, said he'd heard whispering coming from the vents. Their daughter Lily, only 7, began refusing to sleep in a room altogether. She said someone was crawling around under her bed at night. Mark decided to check. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, he grabbed a flashlight and opened the hatch that led to the crawl space. The smell hit him, immediately stale. Sweat and rotting food. He crawled inside on his hands and knees, the low ceiling pressing down on him. That's when he saw them. Food wrappers, crumpled soda cans, a stained blanket balled up in the corner, and a camera. It was an old Polaroid, sitting neatly on top of the blanket. Dust covered most of it, but when Mark picked it up, he noticed a photo still stuck inside. His stomach dropped as he pulled it free. The picture was of his family, sleeping in their beds. The couple didn't want to believe what they were seeing. Surely this was a cruel joke. Whoever had lived here before them must have taken the photos. But when the sheriff found nothing on the property and the pictures continued to appear, Mark and Angela knew they weren't dealing with a simple trap. They packed a bag, intending to stay in a motel until they could sort things out. But that night, they woke 2 strange sounds in the middle of the night. Someone was moving around in their room, shuffling close behind their bed. They could hear heavy breathing, smelled that same disgusting stench wafting over them. Just before dawn, they heard a click. The Polaroid camera flashed. Startled, they turned on the light and saw a new photo pinned to the curtains. It showed their bed, empty except for 2 sets of small footprints stamped into the blanket. By morning, the prints were gone. Angela cried out. Mark stared in disbelief. Had their nightmare followed them? Who would put a camera in a crawl space? Why? Most importantly, who was watching them and why? They decided to drive 3 towns over to stay with relatives. They thought they'd escaped, but the photos followed. Every morning, a new Polaroid appeared somewhere in the house, sometimes under a pillow, sometimes taped to the bathroom mirror. Always of team. Always asleep. They tried calling the sheriff again, but he was no help. He treated them like they were crazy, which made Mark snap. He wouldn't stand by and watch his family be stalked by an unknown entity, or perhaps he would protect them from whatever evil they were facing. It was too late for that. Mark never saw the look in his daughter's eyes when they told him about the man in the vents, nor did he hear the fear in their voices. If he had, maybe he would have acted differently. Instead, he stayed awake one night, pretending to sleep, the bat in his hands. Hours passed in silence. Then, just before dawn, he heard it. The faint scrape of something moving through the walls. The vent cover near the ceiling began to rattle. A pale hand slipped out first. Then a face. Not the face of a drifter, not a normal intruder. The thing crawling through their vents was rail-thin. Its skin waxy and stretched too tightly over its bones. Its eyes reflected the moonlight like an animal's, wide and unblinking. It held the Polaroid camera against its chest like a treasured toy. Mark swung the bat and screamed, but the thing darted back into the vent with unnatural speed, vanishing before he could hit it. The camera's shutter clicked once in the dark, then silence. What happened to the Millers after that night is unknown. Some say they managed to escape their stalker, but others claim the creature claimed them in the end. What we do know is that the sheriff never found the body or the stalker. The relatives stopped answering their calls, and the Millers eventually abandoned their house, leaving behind their belongings, their dreams, everything. But sometimes on stormy nights, neighbors say they still see flashes through the upstairs windows, and if you're ever driving down that road, you might notice Polaroids scattered in the ditch. Pictures of families you don't recognize, pictures of people sleeping. Tyler was just another college kid in Madison, Wisconsin, an engineering sophomore who worked late shifts at a campus diner and often came home well past midnight on a freezing night in November. Tyler trudged back to his off-campus apartment after closing the diner at 3 a.m. He lived alone on the third floor of an old brick building near the lake. Usually, the street outside was quiet, just the hum of distant traffic and the occasional drunk student stumbling home. But as Tyler turned the corner that night, something was off. His apartment lights were on, not just when every light in his unit blazed, spilling yellow into the frosty air, and worse, he could hear faint music. Not from a neighbor, from inside his place. Tyler's heart thumped as he climbed the stairs. His key was still in his pocket. Nobody should have been inside, but when he reached his door, it was unlocked. The music was louder now. Something strange, old, like a warped vinyl spinning too slow. He pushed the door open and froze. Dozens of strangers filled his apartment. Not moving, not talking. Men and women in faded clothes, party dresses, and old-fashioned suits. All of them stood with their backs to him, pressed against the walls, their heads tilted down slightly, hands hanging limp at their sides. The music played, but not one person danced. Not one spoke. It was like walking into a party where everyone had been caught in the middle of something. And then Tyler noticed none of them were breathing. Tyler's instinct screamed at him to run, but his body wouldn't listen. He rubbed his eyes, trying to snap himself out of it, and in that single blink, te were gone, music stopped. The lights flickered once. Tin went out. He stood in the dark silence of his apartment, trembling, the smell of dust heavy in the air. Tyler fumbled for his phone, turned on the flashlight, and checked every room. Empty. Windows locked. Nothing disturbed. Except when he opened his photo gallery, his blood ran cold. There were new pictures. A dozen shots of him, standing in his living room, surrounded by those same strangers. He hadn't taken them. His phone had been in his pocket. In every picture, his expression looked dazed, like he didn't even know they were there. Tyler didn't sleep that night. He sat on the couch with a knife in his hand, staring at his door until sunrise. The next morning, he told his best friend, Marcus, what happened. Marcus laughed nervously, saying it was probably a stress hallucination. But when Tyler showed him the photos, Marcus stopped smiling. Bro, who took these? They went to campus security. The officer flipped through the photos, but shrugged. Could be a prank. Maybe somebody slipped in, took pictures, and left. But Tyler knew it wasn't that simple. He could still hear that warped music in his head, like it was stuck in his ears. And every night afterward, at exactly 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. A new photo appeared in his gallery. Always of EMA. Always standing in the middle of a crowd of frozen strangers. By the fifth night, Tyler was unraveling. He couldn't eat. Couldn't concentrate. Every shadow looked like someone standing too still. Desperate, he started digging into the building's history. Turns out, The apartment complex wasn't always housing. In the 1940s, it had been a ballroom, the kind of place where young couples danced during the war, where parties went on till dawn. But one winter night, during a holiday celebration, a fire broke out. The doors had been locked from the outside to prevent people from sneaking in without paying. Dozens died burned, trampled, suffocated against the very walls Tyler now lived inside. And nobody ever rebuilt the ballroom. They just converted it into apartments. That night, Tyler set his phone on record mode and propped it against the wall, determined to catch proof of what was happening. At 3 a.m. sharp, the music started, the lights blazed. His phone camera flickered. When Tyler woke in the morning, the apartment was empty. He grabbed his phone and played back the recording. The screen was black at first. Then faint light appeared. He saw himself standing still in the living room, expression blank, arms at his side, and around him dozens of frozen strangers, pressed to the walls, their empty eyes glowing faintly. But this time, they weren't facing away. They were all facing him. And in the final second of the recording, before it cut to static, one figure moved forward. A woman in a burned dress. She raised her hand, and she reached for the camera. Marcus went to check on Tyler the next day, after he didn't show up for class. The apartment was empty. Lights still on. Music faint, almost gone. On the couch, Marcus found Tyler's phone. The screen glowed with a single photo. Tyler, standing in the middle of the crowd. But this time he wasn't looking dazed. He was smiling. Some say if you move into that building in Madison, you'll hear the warped music at 3 a.m. If you check your phone in the morning, you might just find yourself at the silent party. The desert highway had been empty for miles. Just sand, asphalt, and the occasional buzz of cicadas. By the time Mark Hensley, a weary door-to-door salesman in his 40s, saw the flickering neon sign for Desert Star Motel, it was past midnight. He hadn't seen another car for over an hour. The motel was small, cracked stucco walls, the color of bone, and a lobby that smelled faintly of mildew. Behind the counter sat an old clerk, a gaunt man with watery eyes, and a crooked name tag that read Ralph. Mark slid his credit card across the counter. Ralph took it, but before handing him the key, he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Never use the spare key," Ralph said. Mark chuckled, thinking it was a joke. "All right." "Why?" Ralph's expression never changed. "Just don't." He slid over key number 6, an old brass key with teeth worn smooth from years of use. Mark shrugged it off. He was too tired to argue. Room number 6 was small. The air conditioner rattled, and the bed sagged. The desert silence pressed heavy against the walls. Mark showered, tossed his suitcase on the chair, and climbed into bed. At 2:03 a.m., he woke to a sound. Click. The door handle shifted. Then another sound. A key turning. Someone was trying to get in. Mark froze, staring at the door as the lock rattled. He whispered, "Wrong room," hoping the intruder would leave. But the handle kept jiggling, metal grinding as though the key didn't quite fit. Finally, the sound stopped. Silence returned, but Mark couldn't sleep. The next morning, he stormed into the lobby. Ralph sat at the counter, sipping coffee. "Someone tried to break into my room last night," Mark snapped. Ralph didn't look surprised. He just repeated, "Never use the spare key." "That doesn't answer my—" Ralph raised his hand, cutting him off. "As long as you don't open that door, you'll be fine." Mark left unsettled. He tried to dismiss it as a drunk guest or a prank. He ate dinner in town, came back, locked the door, even wedged a chair under the knob. Again, at 2 a.m. sharp, the noise began. Click, click, click. The handle twisted violently this time, the chair shuddering against the floor. Mark grabbed the motel phone to call the lobby. No dial tone, just static. "Go away," he shouted. Silence. He didn't sleep until dawn. The next day, Mark asked about another motel in town. Ralph shook his head. "Closest one's 40 miles back." Mark sighed. He didn't have the gas. That evening, while checking his bag, he noticed something odd. At the bottom of the nightstand drawer sat a spare key. It was identical to his, but newer, shinier. He held it in his palm, remembering Ralph's warning. Never use the spare key. He placed it back, but a part of him, maybe exhaustion, maybe desperation, began to wonder. Asterisk. Who keeps trying the door? And why only my room? Asterisk. He didn't wait in bed this time. Mark sat in the chair with a baseball bat he kept in his trunk. The spare key sat on the nightstand, taunting him. At 2 a.m., right on cue. Click. Click. The handle turned. Steady, determined. Then came a whisper, a woman's voice. Mark. His blood ran cold. No one at the motel knew his name. Let me in, Mark. You left me outside. Mark tightened his grip on the bat, his knuckles white. Who are you? He shouted. The voice grew sharper. You know me. You've always known me. Let me in. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. After 5 long minutes, silence returned. By the 4th day, Mark looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. His hands trembled as he signed the breakfast log. He confronted Ralph again. Who's trying to get into my room? What's going on? Ralph stared at him a long time before finally speaking. Every guest in room 6 hears it. Some ignore it. Some don't. What happens to the ones who don't? Mark, ask it. Ralph's eyes dropped to the desk. They never check out. Mark couldn't take it anymore. That evening, the desert sky churned with thunderclouds. He locked his door, bolted it, shoved the dresser in front, and sat clutching the spare key. At 2 a.m., the sound came again. Louder. Stronger. The door shook in its frame. Mark. The voice hissed. Open the door, or I'll open it for you. The keyhole glowed faintly, like fireflies crawling inside. The spare key on his nightstand vibrated against the wood. Something snapped inside him. He snatched the spare key, stumbling to the door. If you want in, he muttered, then come in. He shoved the key into the lock. The door didn't open outward. It opened inward. On the other side wasn't the motel parking lot, but a hallway of endless doors stretching into darkness. The air smelled of rot. The carpet was wet, squishing under his shoes, and lining the hallway were figures. Dozens of pale, shadowed silhouettes staring at him with hollow eyes. At the far end, the whispering woman stepped forward. Her face was his wife's, except she had died in a car crash years ago. You left me out here, she said. Now stay with me. Mark screamed, trying to pull the key free, but his hand wouldn't let go. His body was yanked forward, dragged into the hallway as the door slammed shut behind him. The next morning, Ralph found room 6 empty. The bed was untouched, Mark's belongings neatly folded, car still in the lot. The only thing left behind was the brass room key, resting on the pillow. And in the nightstand drawer, where the spare key should have been, there was nothing. The F-train was almost empty, just a woman, her reflection in the black window, and a man across from her who hadn't blinked in 20 minutes. She timed him on her phone at first, then stopped, because counting made the seconds feel wet and slow. His eyes didn't glaze, didn't water, just watched, like a camera lens that had made up its mind. When the lights flickered, he erased. Noggin moved. He was suddenly in the next seat, shoulder to shoulder, cold air around him like a coat that never warmed. He leaned in, breath, not quite breath, and said, "Your next stop is mine." The conductor announced a station that didn't exist. Not a station she'd never heard in a city she knew by bone. The map above the door twitched letters, rearranging like ants, then settled into a line that didn't loop back to anywhere she could afford. She stood to change cars. Every window showed her sitting. Every reflection blinked at a different time. When the lights stuttered again, the ads changed. All of them, her face, slightly wrong, selling nothing. Behind the plastic, the paper rippled like it was breathing. "Don't," he whispered. "Doors here don't open to other cars. They open to other versions." She waited anyway, because waiting felt like control. The train slid into the nowhere station. Platform lights hummed a pitch that made her teeth itch. The doors sighed. Outside, the tile was new and too clean. The mosaic spelled her last name where the neighborhood should be. A poster on the pillar warned, "Do not stare at passengers who aren't blinking. You'll teach them how." She stepped back into the car, heart drilling, and felt it before she saw it. The temperature was her childhood bedroom cold. The man was where she had been sitting. Her body was where he had been. Her hands weren't her hands. They were steady in a way hers had never been. "Your next stop is mine," she heard herself say, a voice borrowed, smooth as polished rail. Across from her, the new woman tried not to blink. The lights flickered. The map shifted again just once to put the ending exactly where it started. And somewhere in the glass, their reflections both remembered to close their eyes at different times, politely taking turns, like good passengers do. The guy slid into my back seat at 2:13 a.m. Damp suit, salt in his cuffs. Voice like he'd been breathing through grave dirt. "Greenwood Cemetery," he said, not looking up from his hands. Storm clouds smothered the moon all the way there. He didn't talk, but he hummed low, like a battery dying 3 notes. Ober and ober until my dashboard lights stuttered in rhythm. The cemetery gate was chained. I rolled to the curb. "This okay?" "Perfect," he said, and the humming stopped. The car went dead silent. I blinked, reached to pause the app, and glanced in the mirror. Backseat empty. I twisted around. Floor mats. Nothing. No door click, no shoes on wet pavement. No breath fog on the glass. The app still said, "In progress." The route line kept crawling, a blue vein, sliding deeper past the gate, as if my car had drifted inside without me. I killed the engine. My phone stayed bright, GPS dot pulsing over the rows of headstones. Then the text came in, from an unknown number, timestamped exactly 1 year earlier tonight. "Thank you for taking me home." I froze. Breath lodged in my throat. The cabin filled with a faint odor, wet carnations and turned earth. My rear view adjusted itself, just a hair. In the glass, the back seat was occupied again. The man, soaked to the collar, smiling with too many teeth. A seam of dark waterline ringing his throat. "Meter still running," he whispered. But his mouth didn't move. His reflection did. I spun around empty. In the middle, my phone chirped. The fare climbed on its own, numbers ticking up like a heart monitor. The route line ended at a name carved in stone. Mine. First and last. Wrong birth year. No. Death date. Thunder shook the windshield. The back doors clicked, locked. The mirror showed his cold hand settle on my shoulder, indenting my jacket. I didn't feel a thing, just a sudden weight in my chest, like sinking into cold water. The app flashed. Arrived. Then, end. Trip grayed out. Below it, a new button appeared I'd never seen before.
Joined.
Claire had been driving for 8 hours straight, pushing through the lonely desert roads of Nevada. Her GPS had cut out miles ago, and the sun was sinking behind the jagged mountains, staining the sky in bruised purples and deep orange streaks. She was running on fumes, both the car and herself, when she finally spotted the glowing red sign of a gas station flickering against the horizon. It looked almost abandoned. A single pump stood crooked, buzzing faintly. The building itself was squat and tired, paint peeling from its walls. But exhaustion won out over unease. Claire pulled in, filled her tank, and decided to use the bathroom before continuing the last 2 hours of her drive. Inside, the gas station was empty. No clerk. No customers. Just a faint hum of fluorescent lights and the smell of dust. A bell had jingled when she opened the door, but no one came to greet her. She called out once, got no answer, and figured the attendant had stepped outside for a smoke. The bathroom was in the back, down a narrow hallway with a humming vending machine. Claire pushed the door open, and the smell hit her immediately: mildew, rust, and something faintly metallic. She turned toward the mirror above the cracked sink and froze. Words were scrawled across it in thick black marker. "Don't go back to your car. He's waiting underneath it." Her stomach tightened. At first, she thought it was a prank, some bored teenager leaving graffiti. But the handwriting was frantic, jagged. Uneven letters carved across every inch of glass, as if the writer had been desperate to get the message out. The ink dripped down in streaks, fresh enough that it still looked glossy under the light. Claire's pulse quickened. She tried to laugh it off, but something about the bathroom's silence pressed in on her. She reached for the sink, trying to steady her hands, and noticed something else. Scratches on the door. Long, deep grooves etched into the wood, like someone had clawed to get out. Claire considered leaving immediately, but her car was outside, and the message rang in her head. He's waiting underneath it. What did that even mean? Who was he? She told herself it was nonsense. Urban legend junk. She shook her head, took a breath, and decided to peek outside anyway just to ease her paranoia. When she pushed open the bathroom door, the gas station was still empty, still silent, but the air felt different, thicker. The shadows stretched longer across the floor than they should have, and then she noticed it. From the far side of the hallway, a dark, wet trail leading toward the exit, like something had been dragged. Claire rushed to the front counter, desperate to find the attendant. But no one was there. Only a dusty register, a half-drunk cup of coffee, and a pack of cigarettes. Then the bell above the entrance jingled. She spun. Mezzo. A man had entered. He was tall, lanky, with sunburnt skin and clothes that looked a size too big. His boots dragged against the floor. His face was wrong, somehow features sunken. Eyes too pale, crooked smile. "Car trouble?" he asked. His voice was calm, but flat, like he was repeating a phrase he'd practiced. Claire's throat tightened. "No, just stopping for gas." The man didn't blink. "Careful driving out there. Roads can be dangerous." He tilted his head, studying her too long. Things hide in the dark. Shaken, Claire backed away and muttered something about needing to use the bathroom again. She rushed down the hall, locking the door behind her. Her heart hammered as she leaned against it. She looked at the mirror again. The writing still glared back at her. But now there was more. Fresh words had appeared at the bottom, as if written while she was gone. Asterisk, asterisk. "He's inside now. Don't let him see you leave." Asterisk, asterisk. Claire stumbled backward, her knees hitting the toilet. Her skin crawled. How could the writing change? She hadn't heard a sound. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and she heard it. Scraping. Slow, deliberate, coming from under the sink. Claire crouched, shaking, and looked beneath the sink. At first, it looked like just shadows, but then she saw them: fingers. Long, pale, jointed wrong, curling against the tiles. Something hunched in the dark space, pressed up against the pipes, breathing raggedly. Its head turned, too fast, too sharp. Two glowing eyes met hers. Claire screamed and staggered back, slamming into the stall door. The thing crawled out slowly, unfolding itself like it had been hiding there for years. Its limbs were too thin, its mouth stretched too wide, teeth jagged like broken glass, and it whispered, in that same flat voice she'd heard from the stranger. Car trouble. Claire fumbled for the door, tore it open, and sprinted down the hallway. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. The lights above her popped one by one as she ran. The gas station was darker now, the windows black as pitch. She bolted through the front door, into the desert night, lungs burning. Her car sat alone by the pump, but her stomach dropped. The driver's side door was open. She hadn't left it that way. And from beneath the car, she saw Ita, pale hand curling over the asphalt, pulling something out into the night. Claire turned and ran. She didn't stop, not even when her shoes filled with sand and rocks cut into her legs. The desert swallowed her, endless and cold. Behind her, the gas station lights flickered and died, one by one. No one ever found her car. No one ever saw Claire again. But weeks later, a traveler stopped at the same gas station. He used the bathroom, washed his hands, and looked up at the mirror. Fresh words covered the glass. "Don't go back to your car. She's waiting underneath it." The footsteps started the weak, the snow sealed, the house shut, soft pacing above the ceiling like someone counting the ribs of the roof. Every night, the teen lay still, eyes on the hairline crack over the bed, feeling the weight of someone leaning there, listening. On Thursday, they'd had enough. They pulled the rickety ladder, shoved up the hatch, and let the attic's breath roll over their face dry, cold, smelling like old wood and mouse nests. In the dust, just beyond the hatch, sat a small black camera on a tiny tripod, pointed directly at the bed below. Its red light was off. Its metal shell was warm. They picked it up, and it hummed in their palm like a sleeping insect. No brand, no port, no battery door. Just a single recessed button, flush and greasy with use. They pressed it. A tiny speaker crackled, then played back the room below. Faint breathing, the slow stretch of bed sheets, a whisper that sounded too close. "Don't move." They froze. The speaker wasn't playing a recording. It was playing the present. They stuck their head fully into the attic, scanning the beams, the black triangles of the rafters. No one. Then, from the camera's speaker, the sound of the attic hatch softly closing. Their blood thinned to ice. They whipped around, but they were still looking down into their own room, hatch open, lattice steady, while the speaker filled with quiet laughter. Not from above, but from the hole. They crawled in, grabbed the hatch to pull it shut. Stop. The laughter when the camera pulsed and flicked to another feed. Grainy, green, the angle shifted. It showed the attic. Itzoe tem. From behind, they turned. Nothing stood there, just the nailed ridge and a long, fresh groove in the dust, like something had been dragged backward toward the far corner. The camera grew hotter in their hand. On its tiny screen, the attic view zoomed closer, closer, until their own neck filled the frame, hairs upright, pulse fluttering. Words wrote themselves across the display. Black letters burned into the green. Look down. They did. Between their shoes, in the dust, a single clear footprint theirs stepped past where they stood, and kept going, pressed deeper than any living weight, disappearing beneath the insulation like the floor had swallowed it. The camera beeped once. Happa. From their bedroom below, the speaker carried the sound of their phone buzzing on the nightstand. A new notification flashed on the camera's screen. New device added to your home network. Under it, a thumbnail popped up. Live video from their bed. A matching camera nested in the slats beneath the mattress, looking up at where a body should be. The attic camera warmed to a burn. In the live view under the bed, something white slid into frame. A grin, too wide, too flat, arriving from the wall like a page turning. Behind them, the laughter migrated into the insulation. Closer. Wet. The teen threw the camera toward the corner. It hit wood and did not fall. It stuck, like it had been set back on an invisible tripod. The tiny lens tilted just a little like a nod. They They scrambled for the hatch and dropped through, hauling the ladder with both hands. The hatch slammed. Silence flooded the room. Then their phone buzzed again on the nightstand. Same notification, but with a name the system had auto-assigned. Attic, camera bedroom. It's already inside. It was supposed to be a quick shortcut. Ethan Price, a 28-year-old EMT in New Jersey, was no stranger to late-night runs. He'd been working shifts for nearly 5 years, driving patients across town, rushing blood samples, ferrying broken bodies from accident sites to the ER. But on that particular night, exhaustion gnawed at his bones. He had just dropped off a patient at St. Andrew's Medical Center, a sprawling, aging hospital in Newark. Its fluorescent lights buzzed with that faint, maddening hum. The elevator to the parking garage was out of order, and instead of trekking all the way around the building, Ethan noticed a service door half ajar in the corridor. Door leading to the old, unused basement wing. Staff always joked about it. Asterisk. Don't go down there. The place is haunted. They used to keep the bodies there before the new morgue was built. Asterisk. Ethan brushed it off. He wasn't afraid of ghosts. He was afraid of falling asleep at the wheel on the way home. So he pushed the door open. The stairwell was colder than the rest of the hospital. His boots echoed against concrete steps. The overhead bulb flickered as he descended, until finally he reached the bottom. The smell hit him first faint, but unmistakable. Metallic. Sour. Like blood and rot. The hallway stretched on, lit by dying yellow lights. Old equipment lined the walls. Rusted for stands, broken wheelchairs, even a gurney with cracked leather straps. The air was damp, heavy, wrong. Ethan told himself to move faster. Just cut through. Say 5 minutes, and you're back at the car. But then he saw the first room. Through a glass window, dim light revealed rows of beds. Each one had a body on it, perfectly aligned, covered in crisp white sheets pulled up to the chin. Dozens of dim men, women, children. Ethan froze. There hadn't been a mass casualty that night. No disaster. No plane crash. No fire. He would have known. He stepped closer. The smell grew stronger, fresh not like old decay, but as if these people had only just died. His stomach twisted. That's when one of the sheets moved. Just a twitch, a subtle shift, as if something underneath had taken a shallow breath. Ethan staggered back. His heart pounded. No, that's impossible. He forced himself down the hall. Past more rooms on, everyone was the same. Beds, bodies, sheets, and then came the sound. At first, it was just the ventilation system groaning. Then he realized it was layered. A chorus of whispers, too faint to make out words, rising and falling like breath. He pressed his hands over his ears. The whispers, asterisk, didn't stop. They were inside his head. One voice finally cut through, sharp and clear. We're not dead. Ethan broke into a run, his footsteps slamming against tile. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a gurney rolling down the hallway by itself. On it was a woman, mid-40s. Pale skin, eyes wide open. No sheet. Her mouth moved silently at first, then suddenly croaked out. Help me! Ethan stumbled backward, his body screaming to flee, but his training kicked, and he'd been taught to help. Always. To help. Against every instinct, he reached for her wrist to check a pulse. Her hand shot up and clamped around his wrist with unnatural strength. Her lips peeled back in a grin too wide, her voice doubling over itself like two people speaking at once. Stay with us. The lights overhead went out. Pitch black. Ethan's breathing thundered in his ears. The whispers surrounded him again, closer now, louder. He fumbled for his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam caught movement down the hall, sheets sliding off the beds. Figures sitting up, dozens of them. Eyes open, staring. Some had gray skin. Others still looked alive. All of them moved in perfect unison, tilting their heads, watching him. The woman on the gurney sat up straight, her neck snapping with a crack. "You shouldn't have come here." Ethan bolted, sprinting down the endless hallway. His phone light swung wildly, catching glimpses. A man in a hospital gown with no face. A child standing in the corner, grinning with black teeth. A nurse frozen mid-step, eyes sewn shut. He slammed against the stairwell door and shoved it open, racing up the steps 2 at a time. His chest burned, his vision blurred. The whispers chased him, rising to a deafening roar. Finally, he burst into the ground floor. Bright hospital lights, normal nurses at their stations. Everything looked ordinary. He staggered outside, gasping in the cool night air, clutching his chest. His car was right there. He threw himself inside and caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. For a split second just, a flicker his face wasn't his own. It was pale, lifeless. A sheet pulled up to his chin, and behind him, in the back seat, something shifted under a white sheet. Ethan never took the basement shortcut again, but sometimes, when he drives past St. Andrew's at night, he swears he sees faces in the windows covered, waiting, whispering his name.